Good afternoon and good evening again. I'm Takashi Matsumoto from Shimizu Corporation Institute of Technology. I'd like to start the forum, Recontextualizing the Design of the Hiroshima Children's Library. So thank you very much for coming today. We have so many attendees today, so we are very glad to have you here today. So firstly, let me introduce the background of the project. So this forum is a part of a joint research between Institute of Technology, Shimizu Corporation, and Mukogawa Women's University. So this joint project is run by I and Dr. Nishiyama from Mukogawa Women's University. So we are a team who had worked closely at Kyushu University before, because previously I was a faculty of Kyushu University, and then Dr. Nishiyama get his degree at Kyushu University. So our previous research topic was about the architectural section at Kyushu Imperial University. So let me briefly talk about such a background. So the architecture section, the members were designed so many university buildings at Kyushu University. Mainly that activities were done in the Imperial University era before its reformation after World War II. So for example, a building shown on the picture, this is former headquarters of Kyushu University. So it was designed by the architecture section. So on the research, on the study of the architecture section, we found that Yoshikatsu Tsuboi is on the list of architects. So Professor Tsuboi, Yoshikatsu Tsuboi is famous as a leading structural engineer in post-war Japan. And then he was the 5th chief architect of the section. So Tsuboi is well known as a kind of partner of Kenzo Tange. And then today's topic, the Hiroshima Children's Library, was the first project. The collaboration between Tange and Tsuboi has been initiated. So our team, I and Dr. Nishiyama, started examining how the design of the library was created between those two architects or engineers, I mean Tange and Tsuboi. And on the course of the research, we realized that it was not just simply by a plan by Tange, but there was a kind of complex processes. And then there are some designs and plans were influenced on the library design. So we are researching such kind of things on this project. And then there is another interesting thing that the children's library designed by Tange and Tsuboi was not only a library, children's library in Hiroshima at that time. There were 2 children's libraries were coexisted in Hiroshima. So seeing these facts, so we would like to shed light on multiple intersecting contexts of planners from which the unique design of the library has been emerged. So as an approach, we have views from architectural history, and then also we have a view from library history. And then we are going to utilize many archival materials to search contexts of the design history. So this forum is under auspices of Hiroshima City Cultural Foundation Children's Library, and then the forum is supported by Hiroshima Prefecture Library. So it's a great honor for us to have great guest speakers today. So we will have Ms. Ines Zalduendo from Harvard University Graduate School of Design. And then we also have Professor Akira Nemoto, Professor Emeritus, the University of Tokyo, as guest speakers. So please enjoy the forum by the end. Okay, that was the introduction of the forum and the collaborative project. So let me move on to the first talk. So the first talk is by me. Again, my name is Takashi Matsumoto. I'm a senior researcher at Historic Building Group, Center for Urban Space Engineering, Institute of Technology, Shimizu Corporation. So my background is in media design, and I'm working on some archival research, and then also I'm working on some digital archiving stuffs. So I also have a position at Kyushu University Archives as a research fellow. So my talk is about general characteristics of the Hiroshima Children's Library. So let me show you a basic data of the library. So it's located at Motomachi in Hiroshima City. And then, as you may know, it was designed by Kenzo Tange and his laboratory members. And as I mentioned earlier, its structural engineering was done by Yoshikatsu Tsuboi. And then it's constructed by Shimizu Corporation Hiroshima branch. So the structure is a reinforced concrete cylinder with a shell structure. And then its construction was started in 1952, June 1952. And right after the first phase construction, the temporary operation of the library was started at December 1952. And then after the completion, inauguration of the library was done at December 1953. It has been demolished in 1978 because the building got older. So this building is not existing right now. So it has a very unique shape of a cylinder, and people call the shape Morning Glory style. Morning Glory is a very famous flower in Japan, asagao. Then I'd like to briefly explain about the name of the library. It has several names, so please do not confuse on that. So we think the official name of the library is Hiroshima Children's Library, but at some document, it is called as Hiroshima City Children's Library because this library is run by the city of Hiroshima. It's very important part. It's a city library. And then later year, it was renamed or it got a nickname as Hiroshima Kodomo no Ie. It means Hiroshima Children's House. So it has several names, but the important part is its city's library. So on the bottom, I'm showing a drawing by Tange, stored at Harvard University, and it has a code name of HCCL. It stands for Hiroshima City Children's Library. Okay, this is the general information of the library. So I'd like to explain how this was designed from context as architectural history. So there were some previous research on the design of the library. For example, Professor Fujimori interviewed Kenzo Tange, and then he published a book about entire works of Kenzo Tange. And Professor Toyokawa at Chiba University wrote a book to focusing on members of Tange Laboratory. So he emphasized that Tange's work is a kind of teamwork. And then also Professor Toyokawa pointed out that structural engineers are very important for Tange's works. And Project Japan is a very well-known book written by Rem Koolhaas and Obrist, and they tried to contextualize Tange's works and then metabolism movement in a global context of architecture history. And there are some other academic reports by students and professors of Hiroshima University, and they are explaining the design of the library and plan of Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park, which is closely connected to the library building. But most of those previous works are regarding the library as Tange's work. And then what we want to review is that this may be a collaborative work between Tange and Tsuboi. So I'd like to see how those collaboration has been started, and then how the design, unique design was emerged between those two people and some other stakeholders. So this is showing the evolution of their design, collaborative design between Tsuboi and Tange. And Hiroshima Children's Library was the first work of them. And later it was evolved to very big national project like Yoyogi National Gymnasium in 1964 or Expo 70 Big Roof in 1970. So it is a very important beginning of their collaboration. And I'd like to point out that Tsuboi is 7 years older than Tange, and then he already had a lot of experiences before he started collaboration with Tange. So here, briefly, I'm introducing his early career. So he graduated from Tokyo Imperial University, Department of Architecture, and right after that, he moved up to graduate school. And he spent there for about 3 years, and he debuted on academia in 1935 at the annual meeting of Kenchiku Gakkai Architecture Institute, and he did a presentation. Right after that, he moved to Wakayama Prefecture and became an assistant architect, and later became an architect. And he did structural engineering for Wakayama Prefecture office under architect Hachiro Masuda. So he spent 2 years at Wakayama and he moved to Kyushu Imperial University. Firstly, he became a manager of architecture section and lecturer of faculty of engineering. And in 1942, he became an assistant professor and architect. And in 1942, he became also a chief architect. So during his period in Kyushu Imperial University, he got a doctoral degree from Tokyo Imperial University, but that dissertation was based on his research at Kyushu Imperial University. So it was 1941. Then he moved to Tokyo Imperial University in 1942. He became a professor at the second faculty of engineering. So he was a structural engineer, but he also had a good sense on aesthetics design. So early member of Tsuboi Lab, Shigeru Aoki, introduced some episodes about Tsuboi's design. So during Wakayama time, Tsuboi designed some decorations of the Wakayama Prefecture office because he finished his structural engineering work faster, and he used spare time to design those entrance door and spandrels and terracotta relief with a motif of Syrinum lily. Then Tsuboi also studied history of architecture because he had to teach design at Kyushu Imperial University. Then there is a well-known wise saying by Tsuboi among structural engineers that is, the beauty of architecture lies in its creation, while grounded in structural rationality, yet slightly removed from it. So Tsuboi had some kind of design aesthetics of his own. So how the collaboration started between Tsuboi and Tange, there was an intermediary. It was an architect, Taneo Oki. So Oki is regarded as an early member of Tange Lab, but he has been just joined in the lab, and then he was put in charge of the detailed design of the library. So Oki saw a drawing of the original plan of the library, and then he thought that rigid frame structure was boring. So he drew a sketch of morning glory using shell structure. Then seeing the sketch, Tange ordered him to find a structural engineer to realize it. So Oki went to the second faculty of engineering where he graduated to find a professor. So firstly, he would try to find another professor, Professor Ono, but he was absent. So he asked Tsuboi if he can make the shape of morning glory. And then Tsuboi answered, it can be implemented as is. So it was the starting point of the collaboration between Tange and Tsuboi. So important thing here is Oki is regarded as a member of Tange Lab, but at the same time, Oki was one of the last graduate of the second faculty of engineering, where Tsuboi was teaching design and architecture. So that faculty was reformed to the Institute of Industrial Science in 1949 and closed in 1951, March 1951. It was because the faculty was established to educate engineers in the wartime. So it got a pressure to be dissolved. So it was closed in 1951, and Oki graduated at that timing. So Tsuboi has pointed out that the importance of cooperation between designers and structural engineers at such a reformation to the new educational system in 1949, 2 years before the collaboration with Tange started. He wrote some opinions on a journal article. Well, at the interview on a magazine to explain the design of the library, Tsuboi is also using the metaphor of morning glory to explain the style. But Tange does not. He is explaining the concept like architecture that grew from green shade or something. And interestingly, when Tange introduced the design first time at the newspaper, he is using another metaphor. So he says like, it looks like an inverted umbrella, or he used word like umbrella type library or something like that. So I think the morning glories concept was by Oki's drawing, and then Tsuboi succeeded it, but Tange tried to make his own concept onto it. Then on the same magazine interview between Tange and Tsuboi is commenting on famous architects and engineers, Nevi and Saarinen. And Tsuboi is saying that he likes Saarinen more than Nevi. And then he also says that Tsuboi saw some works of Nevi when he was at the graduate school around 1932 to 1935. So we can see some influences between those architects. So this is the summary of evolution of Pierre-Louis Nervi's structure. So Tsuboi was looking at Nervi's work around early 1930s. So the structure of Nervi around the 1930s is pretty similar to the library. And then structures of late 1930s is like a dome shape, which is pretty similar to their second collaborative work, Ehime Gymnasium. So I think Tsuboi is following this kind of trend created by Nevi. Then at the same time, I would like to point out very interesting influence or coincidence between Tsuboi and Eero Saarinen. So right-hand side is a picture of a famous tulip table by Saarinen. It's released in 1958. So I'm not sure exactly what year it has been designed, but it must be around 1953. So slightly Saarinen's table is later than Tsuboi and Tange's library, but it has a kind of a similarity between those two styles. So I'd like to point out that the morning glory style was emerged in the collaboration. So firstly, it was proposed by Oki, and then Tsuboi's structural engineering made it possible. And Tange tried to digest them into his plan of the library in the Peace Park project. Then here, I got one question. Was the design suited for the use as a library? And here, there is a very interesting comments from the second library director. He reminisced in an article that because of its unconventional style, the library quickly became popular and a local landmark. So it was kind of successful as a monument. But at the same time, to put square books and bookshelves in the circle building, it made so many dead spaces. And sometimes dog enter the library and running around, and then he or she breaks the glass, or weight of the cylindrical bracket-shaped pillars caused the glass to warp, and then the glass got broken. So sometimes it looks this design was not functional as a building or functional as a library. So this was a summary of the design from architectural history. And then we can see the shape in original drawing stored at Harvard University, Hiroshima Children's Library. And this morning glory style was reused for other buildings. So this is an office building attached to the Ehime Prefecture Hall or Ehime Gymnasium. So it's completely copying the shape to this building. And interestingly, the same shape is found in competition plan for Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan office. So it is used just as a roundabout in front of the entrance. Then this is another competition plan for Kanagawa Prefecture Library and Concert Hall. Actually, the use of this building is library, but the structure is pretty different. It has 2 floors. So it looks like a fusion of Hiroshima's early plan and the second shell structure plan. We can see such kind of after effect of the library. Okay, I'd like to move to explain context as library history. So it was just after the World War II. And then the Japanese educational system was drastically changing under GHQ, General Headquarters Supreme Commander for the Allied Powers. It was the time of occupied Japan. Then there was a person, Dr. Howard Mitchell Bell, at the education division of CIE, and he did so many supports on education of children. For example, Howard Bell donated some stationaries to schools, and he also supported on establishment of Hiroshima Children's Culture Auditorium. The auditorium was constructed in 1948, shown on the picture on the bottom. Then the project of the auditorium was not by Howard Bell, but by local educators. So local educators in Hiroshima had a huge plan of cultural halls. And then the biggest one was the auditorium constructed in 1958. And then we can see a children's library in this plan. So this plan by local educators was succeeded to Tange for cultural centers. Then I'd like to introduce some library policy and administration at that period. So CIE made some information centers in Japan, and then ESCAP CIE Information Center, it was called just as CIE Library, was established in Hiroshima in 1948. So the CIE information centers were established in 23 locations across Japan to introduce the American-style library model to Japanese people and serve as cultural centers providing democratic education. Then, under such circumstances, the Hiroshima's Children's Library was started in the Hiroshima City Asano Library. So Asano Library was a very central library of the city of Hiroshima, which has been established in 1931, but it was damaged by an atomic bomb in World War II. And after that, it was restored and reopened in 1949. So at the same year, Hiroshima Children's Library was established in the Asano Library with donation of books by Howard Bell. So the collection is called Bell Collection. So that was the very beginning of Hiroshima Children's Library. Then how it got a new building with the very unique shape, there was a donation by Hiroshima Kenjinkai of Southern California. Kenjinkai is a kind of local community from Hiroshima, and they donated War Relief fundraising, and that became a financial source of Hiroshima Children's Library. The Kenjinkai asked the city to build the library with reinforced concrete, so that the city asked Tange to design the library. So that was the reason this unique library was designed by Tange. But at the same time, there was another donation. It was donation of Children's American Library by Hiroshima Tosho, one of publishing company in Hiroshima. And around the period, there was American Fair in Nishinomiya in Hyogo Prefecture, and then the publishing company was exhibiting American Model Library there. Then he offered a donation of the building to the city. So after some negotiations between the city and prefecture and the CIE, it was decided that the children's library will be run by the prefecture, because that building was wooden building. It was not reinforced concrete. So Hiroshima Prefecture Children's Library, it's not the same library as Tange's library, was established in 1951. Then it was expanded to Hiroshima Prefecture Library in 1954. So those about 3 years, Hiroshima already got children's library. So two children's library were coexisting in early 1950s. So I'd like to show you how children were using the library. This is scenes of Hiroshima Prefecture Children's Library, and I feel they look very happy, and it's very, very crowded, and children are very energetic in this library. Then after that, Hiroshima Children's Library was constructed. Hiroshima Children's Library is like more like sophisticated and calm and quiet, well organized type of library we can see. So those were some context, historical context of the library from architecture side and library side. And as a conclusion, I would like to point out again that the library was realized as a result of several plans of stakeholders, not only Tange, but also local educators and Howard Bell at CIE and blah, blah, blah. And then the design was realized by cooperation of several talents, like Professor Tsuboi and architect Oki, and so on. Then it was unique that two children's libraries were coexisting in one prefecture. So in later part of this forum, Dr. Nishiyama will introduce comparative study on those two libraries. So thank you very much. This was the first talk from me. Okay. Then here I'd like to move to talk 2. Let me introduce the speaker. So today we have a special guest speaker, Ms. Ines Zalduendo. So I used some archival materials at the Kenzo Tange archives at Harvard University, but she's in charge of the collection. So Ines Zalduendo is the special collections curator of the Francis Loeb Library at Harvard University's Graduate School of Design, an architect and archivist by education and training. Her focus at GSD is on collection development, exhibitions, teaching, and outreach. She has been a lecturer at GSD and has presented papers on architecture and archives at several international conferences. Ines graduated with a Diplôme d'Architecture from Universidad de Buenos Aires, a master's in architecture from Harvard GSD, and a master's in library and information science with a concentration in archives and administration from Simmons University. So Ines, could you start your presentation?
Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Takashi Matsumoto and Shuji Takegawa from the Institute of Technology at Shimizu Corporation for the invitation to this online forum. I am very honored to be here. I was asked to introduce the work we have done with the Kenzo Tange archive at Harvard University. It's an opportunity to raise awareness of the importance of archives and to explain what happens behind the scenes to make archives of this caliber discoverable and accessible at a global scale. As stewards of this collection, our commitment is grounded in our history of building collections that deepen the understanding of architecture and that support the research and teaching mission of our university. The Graduate School of Design is part of Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. It was designed by John Andrews and built in 1972. It is a brutalist building with a full block front facade on Quincy Street, and towards the back garden, an inclined glass roof covers this space that we call the trays. The glass roof is supported by big trusses that span over 5 levels, and each level balconies onto the level below. Students share design studio here and continuously are aware of what is happening around them in other studios. Here, they benefit from discussing their projects with others. The library at the GSD is the Francis Loeb Library. It occupies 2 levels with a very prominent presence on the front facade, and access is directly from the ground floor lobby of the school. The upper level is used by students for individual or group study and is also easily reconfigured for public events. The school has a highly active communications department that supports the organization of talks, workshops, and exhibitions. We have at least 2 exhibitions in the upper level of the library each semester, many times with materials from our collections. We are continuously collaborating with the exhibitions team, students, and faculty. Special Collections is on the lower level of the library, where we have the reading room for researchers and where we also hold classes. We house 5 different collections with a diversity of formats and goals. They all support the academic departments of the school, which is not only architecture, but also landscape architecture, urban planning, and design. The materials collection is a collection of material samples classified by composition. It includes biocomposites, polymers, metals, minerals, and ceramics. The visual collections include still images and moving images in different formats: glass plate, 35mm slides, photographic prints, digital images, as well as film and videos. The rare book collection includes publications from 16th century Italian treatises to current day limited editions of books and journals. It also includes GSD faculty publications and student theses. The archival collections include over 150 collections that individually range in size from a couple of folders to thousands of drawings, the Kenzo Tange archive among them. We also have a Le Corbusier research collection, which is a collection exclusively of printed books by and about Le Corbusier, the biggest collection of Le Corbusier printed materials in the United States. We purchase in every language and across the world. What brings us together today is the Kenzo Tange archive. The larger context of our collection building has to do with the reality that in architectural education, research, and practice, we operate increasingly in a global context. The Kenzo Tange archive reflects that, documenting one of the most significant early global architectural practices of the 20th century. With projects in Asia, Europe, Africa, the Middle East, and North America. These projects include, for example, Tange's competition entry and later development for the reconstruction of Skopje, with an advisory board headed by architect Ernest Wiseman of the United Nations, whose archive we also hold. Many of our collections have interesting connections with each other. Access to collections such as this one support research and teaching, exhibition, and publications. Therefore, the stewardship of the collection is a priority for us. The collection also comes with the expectation of digital access, so planning for the preservation, processing, and access of the Kenzo Tange archive took on an added scale of commitment that could only be done through collaboration and leveraging the expertise we have across the university. In some ways, the Kenzo Tange archive is not unlike other 20th century architectural collections. It includes preliminary design, development, and presentation drawings, as well as construction documents for residential, commercial, religious, government buildings, transportation hubs, and master plans for residential, commercial, religious, and master plans for projects at an urban, metropolitan, or regional scale. They present themselves with the delight of amazing drawings and with the usual situation of incomplete documentation and needed preservation. The archive includes over 20,000 architectural drawings documenting 140 projects. Some are housed in the library in over 55 flat file cabinet drawers. Others are in 123 tubes of drawings housed at the Harvard Depository, an off-site university facility in the outskirts of Boston with daily deliveries to Cambridge when requested by researchers. Most, although not all, of Tange's projects are represented in the archive. We have the drawings for the Hiroshima Peace Center, dated in 1949, Hiroshima Children's Library, 1952, which you saw in Takashi's presentation, Kagawa Prefectural Government, Kurashiki Civic Center, Tokyo Metropolitan Government Building, all 1958, Yoyogi National Gymnasiums, 1964, Shizuoka Press and Broadcasting Center in Tokyo, and St. Mary's Cathedral in Tokyo, both in 1967, among many, many others. Also included are unrealized projects such as the Dentsu headquarters, also 1967, to give just one example. The sheer quantity of drawings, 20,000 of them, is representative of a 20th century phenomenon. Architectural practice expanded both programmatically and globally, and became increasingly more interdisciplinary. The trend towards more complex building programs and consequent interdisciplinary nature resulted in records duplicated among designers and consultants from a range of fields, translating into unprecedented number of records. In addition to the architectural drawings, the archive also includes hundreds of books, journals, and pamphlets, as well as a group of portfolios of clippings kept by Tange while he traveled for the openings of his projects. and a few sketchbooks, writings, and manuscript notebooks, including the one he kept while teaching a studio at MIT in 1959, related to the Boston Harbor and the envisioning of a new community on the sea that predate his 1960 Tokyo Bay project. We also have 5 of his models, including Tokyo Bay, but unfortunately, no photographs, no job files, and no correspondence. However, the Tange archive is not only about the quantity of drawings and the similarities with other architectural collections, but rather about the legacy of one of the most significant architects of the 20th century and the possibility it opens for research purposes. When students and scholars engage, for example, with the compositional thinking behind Tange's alternative proposals for inhabiting the water in a country with limited land availability, they can question their own assumptions on the built and natural environments. When they understand the construction techniques behind some of his megastructures, they can reimagine structural solutions for spaces at a scale they never imagined before. Tange's architectural practice, project after project, decade after decade, no matter which the geographic location, is doubtless of continuous innovation. He is a reference that broadens the understanding of what architecture is capable of how we can imagine and construct our world. It is that rarely attainable, consistent architectural practice and worldwide impact that is documented in this archive and is the real beauty of this collection. Furthermore, the value of archival collections in academic institutions is that they promote study and foster original research, and this in turn advances disciplinary knowledge. Archival collections are at the heart of research, at the heart of what we do in universities. Therefore, the significance of the Kenzo Tange archive at the GSD cannot be underestimated. If the archives we already hold of José Luis Sert, Jorge Ferrari Ardoy, and Allison and Peter Smithson, among many others, were not only international in scope, but significant enough for us in terms of their propositions in architectural theory and practice, the Kenzo Tange archive expands the horizon of our collections. In a school that is among the most international schools within Harvard, both in terms of its faculty and of its student body, some of our graduates will most probably lead practices that are global and broader in scope than those of a generation back. Based on our experience with other large international collections, we anticipated heavy use from the very beginning. In fact, within the first couple of months of the collection's arrival, we were already making loans and shipping drawings back and forth twice to Japan. We knew the responsible stewardship of this collection could not be done by the GSD alone, but through the collaboration that the privilege of working at Harvard facilitates. Because archives matter to us, we reached out to the knowledge spread throughout the university. Japanese students that have the necessary intellectual interest and language skills for the description of the collection, faculty that have the added subject expertise for helping us prioritize decisions in relation to the collection, and our library colleagues throughout the university that have deep experience in terms of preservation, imaging, and systems to make the collection accessible. It is important to understand the behind-the-scenes work to make the Kenzo Tange archive available to the world. Here is a roadmap of sorts for stewarding archival collections for global access. These are the different steps needed to make this possible. Appraising a collection involves ensuring the reliability and authenticity of the materials and their evidential value for research purposes. Accessioning involves the legal ownership of a collection and registering its content upon arrival. Conserving is necessary to ensure the long-term availability of the archival materials and the stabilization of drawings for safe digitization. Processing requires the arrangement and description of a collection to gain the physical and intellectual control that will enable discovery and access. Discovering increasingly depends on systems and interconnected digital platforms, and accessing is both by analog and digital means, and is what brings relevance to a collection because it makes it allows for different interpretations and new narratives to come to the fore. The deed of gift, the legal document by which a collection is transferred to an institution, was signed with the donor, Mrs. Kenzo Tange, in 2011. We started by defining the scope of our undertaking as soon as it was certain that the archive was coming to us. We did some space planning ahead of the shipment arrival and almost doubled our flat file space for the drawings. The archive arrived in 2013 in 9 crates with drawings in folders and in tubes, and 2 crates of books. The crates arrived both by ship and by air. Our first task was to take stock of what we received. We first arranged the folders and tubes by project, which seems simple, but takes time when you're talking about a collection with thousands of drawings, and drawings for one project are not coming one after the other, but are showing up in crate number 3, crate number 5, crate number 7. So we did this assembling of drawings per project with students that had the intellectual curiosity and language skills. 3 of them were Japanese. The other 3 were Americans that had lived in Japan and had done their elementary and secondary school there. So they could all read and write in Japanese. Architectural collections are not easy. They are characterized by fugitive media, deteriorated supports, and by drawings most often in large sizes that are difficult to handle by a single person. Then the Harvard Library's Weizmann Preservation Center carried out a condition assessment of the collection that took a full year. They produced a report that identified both the media and support of the drawings. The conservation did this analysis both through spectrometer readings to understand the chemical composition of the inks and papers, and through nano-analysis to understand the presence or not of organics. This allowed them to assess the collection and make recommendations and guidelines for us to be able to provide the needed care of the drawings for the long run. It included good practices from housing to handling to digitization. The reason for digitization is twofold. It facilitates online access and it diminishes the direct handling of drawings. So it is good on 2 fronts, for access and for preservation. The collection includes mostly original drawings in graphite or ink on trace, vellum and mylar, sometimes with the addition of colored pencil and markers, each requiring different enclosures for their adequate care. In addition to transparent papers, there are also drawings on opaque papers and plastic films, many with damage in the form of creases, tears, material loss, and brittleness or fragility. The damage is exacerbated by extensive use of pressure-sensitive tape that has deteriorated and results in the loss of adhesion, detachment, and discoloration. Many of the drawings that are the result of reprographic processes, such as diazotypes, fade easily, and some silver-based prints already present signs of silver mirroring. Even though this may seem a daunting panorama from a preservation point of view, it is not unlike most of 20th century architectural collections in terms of preservation. And with current expectations of immediate digital access worldwide, it offered us the opportunity to re-envision how to make this collection accessible for research. Once the condition assessment was complete, we were able to move forward with the preservation work needed. This meant the rehousing of drawings and initial treatments for stabilization in order to digitize. In parallel, we started the processing of the collection, which entails both its arrangement and description. Together, they provide the physical and intellectual control of a collection and enables access to the records. Together, they provide the physical, I read that. For this, we follow the archival principles of provenance and original order that document, capture, and ensure the maintenance of contextual and internal relationships among the records. For the arrangement or collection contents, we devised a simple hierarchical structure. And because the bulk of this collection consists of drawings, the hierarchical arrangement was quite straightforward. The fons or collection is the higher level, and under that, we established a series level structure. One series was for the architectural drawings, another for the publications, another for the notebooks, and another for the models. The drawings are arranged chronologically by project, and thereunder the folders or tubes with groups of drawings that pertain to that project. If provenance and original order are the foundation for the hierarchical arrangement of arrangement or collection contents, which you see here at the bottom left of the image, the description is of the physical characteristics as well as the intellectual content of the archival items. The question then is how to better describe architectural records and how to do so for groups of drawings rather than individual items. A multi-level hierarchical structure allows for the description from the general to the particular. The collection level, for example, may include many elements or areas of description that do not need to be repeated at the lower levels. This translates into something more than just a folder or box listing. Think of it as levels losing certain information that has been described in its immediately pre-existing hierarchical level and acquiring more specific information as you move down from level to level. This is what we call a finding aid, which at Harvard we make accessible online through a Harvard-wide system called Hollis for Archival Discovery. It operates with an open source back-end archival management system called Archives Space. Historically, the description of large architectural collections is done in one of two ways, either an illustrated catalog with surrogate images of each drawing, or a descriptive inventory where the description is text-based. This format can efficiently support online access, particularly when accompanied with rich metadata. Metadata, which is nothing more than data about data, is critical, particularly in a global landscape where information is increasingly distributed and researchers expect access through digital means. Discoverability depends on the contextual information provided by this metadata, and this context is always relational. Individual digital objects, if they are to be useful, need to be understood within their context rather than as separate standalone items. This context of data or contextual mass enables broad access, and access is what advances scholarship. Because of the anticipated heavy use of this collection, we envisioned the hybrid of the dichotomy of image or text-based description and plan for a considerable amount of digitization. With a robust finding aid, we can easily link to the digitized images for them to be browsable online. This hybrid approach enables broader worldwide access to the drawings, and I'll show you how this works. If you Google GSD archival collections, you come across this finding aid, this library guide, and there's an alphabetical listing of all of our collections. If you go down to the T for Tange, you have one entry to the Hollis record, which is the description in the library catalog. You can expand that description, and it has minimal information to get a sense if you want to look at it. And then you go into the finding aid where there's a more detailed description of the collection. And on the left, you see here the hierarchical structure used for the drawings where we're showing each of the projects. As mentioned, because we were working with Japanese students, we could do titles and geographic locations both in English and in Japanese. When you find a project that you want to look at, you can go to the folder and scroll down again. This is a new interface from the last 2 or 3 weeks. And actually go into the viewer that is called Mirador, where you can look at the drawings in more detail. The scanning is amazing. You can actually zoom in pretty much. Zoom out. It also has different ways to show those drawings in a grid view or scrolling through them. And it also has information as to how to cite every drawing in the collection. Finally, archival collections are at the core of the mission of research institutions. In the book Conceptualizing 21st Century Archives, Anne Gilliland expresses that archivists and curators should seek to contribute more to the world than simply trying to stay afloat in a sea of change. I think of our role in the broadest sense as having agency in the production of knowledge. We do this by building collections, establishing connections within and between collections, surrounding a work with a network of metadata, and a series of actions that will enable discoverability and access. At GSD, we make our collections open to the world because we believe archives matter. Access to archives unlocks information, which in turn allows for multiple interpretations, new narratives, and innovative ideas. The mission of the GSD is to educate leaders in design, research, and scholarship to make a more resilient, just, and beautiful world. And that is what we continuously strive for in special collections. Finally, we shouldn't forget why we received this archive. It is because Mrs. Takako Tange, the donor, aware of the significance of her late husband's legacy in the global architectural landscape, believed this would be the best home for his papers. At Harvard's Graduate School of Design, the Kenzo Tange Archive would be cared for in perpetuity and made accessible to a broad pool of international researchers. And that is what we do. Our stewardship is for global access.
Okay, thank you very much, Ines. So we learned that Harvard University is putting a lot of effort to keep a huge collection of Tange, and then we learned how to access the archives. So hopefully some attendees of this forum will utilize those archival materials. Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to move to next presentation. Let me see. Okay. Next presentation is by Dr. Yuda Nishiyama. He is a lecturer at Mukogawa Women's University. And Yuda Nishiyama specializes in the history of modern architecture and architectural design. His research examines how architects and the discipline of architecture itself participated in the formation and maturation of the modern nation, and how the profession shaped its own identity. Focusing primarily on pre-war government and university building works in Japan, he investigates the institutional and technical foundations of modern architectural practice through multifaceted analysis of legal systems, human resource development, organizational operations, disaster prevention technologies, and design. His work explores the relationships between people, organizations, and material production in modern architecture. So I'd like to pass the mic to Yudai, Dr. Nishiyama. Could you start your presentation?
Can you see my presentation?
Yes, but it becoming a presentation mode, presenter mode. So could you change it to full screen?
Okay.
Yeah, now it's fine.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for your introduction. So my talk 3 will be started. I'm Yudai Nishiyama from Mukogawa Women's University, Japan. I'm currently in Nishinomiya City, Hyogo Prefecture, where the America Fair I will discuss later was held in 1950. However, I'm originally from Hiroshima City, in fact. Today's my talk titled Comparative Study on Two Children's Libraries in Hiroshima in the 1950s will mention the historical connection between Hiroshima and Nishinomiya City. First, let's briefly review the two children's libraries. One was the municipal and the other was the prefectural one. As Dr. Matsumoto mentioned in his talk, within the fields of architectural history and design, the Hiroshima City Children's Library is known as a design work by Kenzo Tange, famous Japanese architect. In contrast, the prefectural children's library has received almost no attention until now. These both libraries were recognized as entirely different entities, both organizationally and as buildings, and were fundamentally not considered related. However, my archival research revealed that in reality, the two children's libraries had influenced each other during their establishment. Particularly, when comparing the two from the perspective of library history, not only architectural history, the fact that the prefectural one opened more than 3 years earlier than city one is significant, I think. Then, I'd like to talk about the history of the City Children's Library. Looking at this photo, some circular desks and movable bookshelves were arranged within a large open plan space with no walls. Many children picked up books and enjoyed reading there without restriction. This was introduced as a new American-style open library system at that time. However, Tange's this plan or design did not exist from the beginning. Before World War II, Hiroshima City had the Asano Library, which had been established with a donation from the Asano family, the old feudal laws of this region. And one of the rooms in that building was the children's library room. A collection of children's books had been purchased with a donation from Dr. Ichiro Tanaka, who lived in Hiroshima. But unfortunately, this children's library room was completely destroyed by the atomic bomb on August 1945. And today, there is no trace of it left. After the World War II, the Asano Library has been repaired and restored. And more than 1,500 picture books, color books, were sent by people from Hiroshima Prefecture living in the United States through Dr. Howard Bell. So these books have been called the Bell Collection until today. And so a children's room was established within the Asano Library again. The wooden signboard used at that time is still preserved today. So if you visit the Hiroshima City Children's Library today, you can find it easily. This photograph is one of the few records showing the children's room within the Asano Library after World War II. Several students were reading or studying with books. Surprisingly, however, there were also some adults in the room. Perhaps the children's library wasn't meant to be a room exclusively for children, but rather a room that children could also use. While the Asano Library was being restored, a new plan was actually being considered by city government of Hiroshima. This is a plan that the city of Hiroshima conceived around 1947 to 48. The plan was called the Hiroshima Children's Cultural Association. It was a cultural complex that combined not only library and cultural hall, but also gymnasium, art museum, zoo, and some kind of memorial tower or various other facilities for children. This plan was initiated independently by the city and some educators of Hiroshima. So Tange was not associated with it. According to the drawing, it appears that most of the facilities or buildings were planned to be simple wooden structures. Later, with Tange joining this project, the design experienced a major transformation. Only the auditorium was constructed in wood, as it was built first in 1948. However, the children's library was put on hold. It may come as a surprise, but Tange did not actually wish to design a children's library himself. His team got first prize in the design competition for the Hiroshima Peace Center in 1949. After that, the city of Hiroshima commissioned Tange, the winner of the competition, to design the children's library as an additional work. According to the text of Tange's letters at that time, it appears that Tange himself was not entirely pleased to have been commissioned to design the library. This was because Tange Laboratory was extremely busy and had no capacity. Regardless, Tange did not refuse and accepted that project. And this was the early proposal that was presented by Tange Laboratory. While the circular shape of the plan is the same as in the design that was later realized, but the other aspects are clearly different. This plan would be further developed and eventually lead to a shell concrete structure. Another important factor was the Hiroshima Kenjinkai of South California. They agreed with the city's plan for a children's library and donated a substantial sum equivalent to 4 million yen at the time. They hoped for the reconstruction of their hometown, Hiroshima, and the project, library project, would become a permanent memorial for Hiroshima citizens. Several factors, including the city's plan, the Kenjinkai, Tange Laboratory, or Tsuboi Laboratory, interacted to give shape to this concrete shell library. That library has already been rebuilt and no longer exists now. Although the children's desks and bookmobile are not the originals from that era. Traces of the original design or the name, such as Tomohatogo, can still be seen. One of the few remaining traces of the 1950s is the sculpture surrounding the library. Behind the current library stands a sculpture of a pigeon that once stood at the front of the children's library. It was donated by the Kobe-based artist Joichi Yamamoto in 1954. And the most valuable resource is documentary color film, which titled Watashi tachi no Toshokan. It means our library in English. It's unclear what the narrator is saying, but there is also a memorable cut of a morning glory flower. It reminds me of this library's shape. This is symbolic in looking back on the history of this library, I think. From here on, I'll talk about the prefectural children's library. Although there is relatively little information available on this topic, that does not mean it is unimportant. This is because the current Hiroshima Prefectural Library originated as a children's library. To begin with, the Prefectural Children's Library originated from the America Fair in 1950. As you know, this was a kind of expo in which many government agencies and private companies participated. The GHQ and the United States Army also assisted in this. Over 2 million people visited in 86 days from all over Japan. That was a big event in the Kansai region. Many pavilions were set up with the aim of learning from America's advanced culture, technology, their history, and their mind or spirit of liberal democracy. For this educational purpose, children were clearly one of the main target audiences. This is a guide map of the site at that time. We can really feel the festival atmosphere. There are 2 contents here I found. One is the children's library on the left, and the other is CIE Information Center on the right. The children's library was a private pavilion exhibited by Hiroshima Publishing Corporation. The library name Gin no Suzu, it means silver bells in English, was the name of a children's magazine series published by the company. And this library was also known as the name Children's American Library. In this library, new American textbooks for elementary school students and color books were on display, and visitors could buy them to take home. Bookmobile, offset printing machine, and open shelf systems were on display, making a strong impression on Japanese visitors. And the Bell collection was also lent by the city of Hiroshima and was on display here, not for sale. American color books were also on display at CIE Information Center. In this center, not only books, but also the system used to manage them was on display. For example, a demonstration was given of new library management system using microcard readers. In addition, educational films were shown, which were very, very popular with the Japanese children and adults. This was the example of an effective media mix or media complex, books and movies in Japan. It is recorded that Mrs. Cardwell served as a chief director of this center. She was a librarian who had received training in library science in the United States. According to some notes, the books, equipment, and facilities of Ginno's library were donated and relocated to Hiroshima after the America Fair concluded. However, the exterior design of the prefectural children's library does not look like this. These were not same, yes, but of course, it is entirely possible that the deconstruction materials were reused and relocated in Hiroshima. The Hiroshima Prefectural Children's Library was opened in November 1951. It had roofs in red and blue color and white walls, and reminds me of the Stars and Stripes of US. This suggests a close relationship with the United States. This children's library was opened nearby CIE Library, Hiroshima, directed by Mrs. Cardwell. Do you remember the name Cardwell? Yes, she was one of the key persons, clearly. The children's library was operated in conjunction with the nearby CIE Library, where Mrs. Cardwell was the chief director. Thanks to her advice, many events were held throughout the year, including English book clubs, movie screenings, and Hinamatsuri party, or Christmas party, or so on. It seemed to be full of children every day. Although the details regarding the facility are unclear, not clear, the book donation from Hiroshima Publishing Company is clearly documented. Not only Japanese books, but also a lot of English books have been donated. So it is highly possible that these were exhibited at the America Fair in Nishinomiya City. Because the Hiroshima Prefectural Children's Library covered a large area, it focused its efforts on the book mobile service named Minori-go. Minori means harvest, I think. Children's Library was renamed the Hiroshima Prefectural Library for the general public in April 1954. The book mobile service played a major role as its foundation. April 1954, this timing coincides with the official opening of the City Children's Library. It was just same time. I think it's clear that while the Tange Laboratory has been regarded as the main player, it is important, of course, but only one factor among many. Until now, two children's libraries in Hiroshima have been built in contrast to one another, whether in terms of reinforced concrete versus wooden construction, artistic expression by Tange versus functionality or simple design, or whether they continue to operate as children's libraries or have been converted into general purpose library. However, several overlapping factors such as the Bell collection or American Open Library System were involved in their establishment. By focusing on the perspective of library history or media history, we can reframe them as mutually interrelated. It is true that the influence of the American system is more strongly reflected in the prefectural one. However, it is important to note that the municipal one was based on the Bell collection and donations from the Kenjinkai or other associations from US. And the story continues to spread toward the present day, even after the library buildings were completed. Even after buildings has been rebuilt or relocated, we can still trace their history through some documents, photographs, film roll, sculpture, and others. In particular, as film materials are digitized in the near future, we will be able to obtain or get more information, including audio, about how City Children's Library is used and operated. I have not been able to find any color photographs of the Prefectural Children's Library. If I could find some, I'd be able to describe the exterior color scheme in detail. These are my sources for reference images. I refer to official documents, newspaper articles, journal articles, magazine articles, some books, some published books, and materials from public archives or private archives. I took my own photographs of some items, such as film roll and sculpture. For more detail, please refer to my report paper to be published later, probably next month. I'd like to say thank you to everyone who assisted my research, and thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Yudai Nishiyama. It was a very interesting talk. We could learn that not only the architecture side, but how we imported the new system of library. And then your presentation was let us think what the library is. Yeah, fundamentally what the library is. So it was very interesting talk. Thank you very much. Well, now I'd like to move to the last presentation. We have the other great guest speaker. Let me see. Yeah, we have Professor Akira Nemoto. He is an expert in library and information science. So Akira Nemoto, PhD, has been engaged in theoretical research about libraries for 40 years. During that time, he was enrolled in educational research at the University of Library and Information Science for 10 years, the University of Tokyo Graduate School of Education for 20 years, and Keio University Faculty of Letters for 5 years. His publications include The Archival Thought, Library Education Theory, and Library and Information Science in Epistemological Contexts, among others. He has also translated Birger Hioland's What is Knowledge Organization recently. Recently, he has received research funding and is focusing on research into regional archival theory, school library research, and knowledge organization theory. He shares his finding on his blog. So please access his blog after the talk. So Professor Nemoto, could you start your presentation?
Okay, thank you. Is this okay?
Yes.
At first, I would like to thank Shimizu Corporation for inviting me to speak at this great opportunity. And welcome, everyone. Today, I will discuss the status and history of children's libraries in Japan and how they have been positioned within the field of library architecture. Japanese people had high urban literacy rates since the Edo period and have maintained a culture of valuing books even after the Meiji period. This tradition saw bookshops appearing all over the country, making books relatively accessible even to ordinary people. This may differ from countries like the United States, which have vast land areas. The first drawing, and these images show a variety of reading spaces in Japan. The first ukiyo-e depicts children learning to read and write from their teachers at Terakoya, means temple school. The children are seen behaving freely. It is said that there were more than 15,000 Terakoya schools in Japan. The second photo shows brothers reading together in a middle-class Japanese family from the 1960s. A home that often had as many books as the bookshelf behind them. The last photo shows the children's book section of a typical bookshop. As we see later, the number of bookshops is decreasing, but you can still find children's book places wherever you go in Japan. As such, Japanese people have the habit of purchasing books from bookshops, and library use was not very common. The graph shows the changes in the number of bookshops and libraries since the 1970s. The yellow line represents bookshops and the red line represents libraries. In the 1970s, there were 27,000 bookshops nationwide. About 10 times the number of libraries. However, since the 1990s, the number of bookshops has been declining, while the number of libraries has been steadily increasing. There are 6 main categories of facilities providing books to children in Japan, besides bookshops, ranging from official public institutions to grassroots community movements. There are all facilities that can be used free of charge. I will focus on the first category, public library, so I will introduce some other facilities. There are small children's collections in kindergartens, community centers, welfare facilities, correctional facilities, etc. The number is unknown, but there are many in local facilities. The first photo shows a children's center library, which is a kind of children's welfare facilities after the school. Picture book galleries of the second photo are museums and galleries dedicated to authors and illustrators. This is Karuizawa Picture Book Forest Art Museum. It specializes in picture books, exhibiting rare original illustrations and first editions of picture books, mainly European and American picture books. Third one, school libraries. It is mandatory for schools to have a school library. There are as many as there are schools, and there are over 30,000 of them nationwide. The placement of school librarians is also progressing, and they read aloud to children and help children choose books. Here, I would like to talk about some historical facts about Japanese children's culture and books. The 1920s was a period known as the Taisho liberalism, when schools adopted a less restrictive educational policy. The magazine Akai Tori, which means red birds, was published with the aim of fostering rich emotions in children. After World War II, the occupying forces under the US Army initially tried to incorporate libraries into education. And at this time, the Public Library Act in 1950 and the School Library Act in 1953 were enacted, establishing a legal system. The background to this was the challenge of restoring education in urban areas that had been burned to the ground by air raids, and while there were not enough school buildings, people wanted to at least get children to read books. The Hiroshima Children's Library, Hiroshima City Children's Library, which opened in 1949, is thought to have been built with special international support, particularly as the city was the site of atomic bombing. It was built as a separate building for children that had stood as a symbol of peace and reconstruction through the power of books. Before the period of rapid economic growth, post-war Japan was poor. People were poor, making it difficult to establish children's libraries. So they were supported by private sector, mainly mothers' initiatives. Establishing children's libraries as centers for children's reading was a new endeavor at that time, and it could be said that it became a goal for the future. The photo shows that children's author Momoko Ishii was reading to children at her own home's Katsura Library, Katsura Bunko. Creating dedicated spaces for children's reading was a pioneering endeavor at that time. These early libraries served as a fundamental model and goal for future educational development. This is the president of the Kate Bunko Home Library movement, which would lead to public library children's services. Now, many Kate Bunkos are serving children at local areas, like Kono Ano Bunko, Tokyo Yet. And this is a picture. While the idea of providing books to children is widespread today, in those days, few households could afford to buy books at home. Therefore, the issue of promoting children's reading took firm root after the war. After a period of private reading campaigns, the Japan Library Association created public library promotion policies from the 1960s onwards. Many public libraries have been established in local governments with children's services firmly positioned within them. In 2000, the International Children's Library was established in Ueno, Tokyo, as a branch of the National Diet Library. And in 21, the Act on the Promotion of Children's Reading Activities was enacted, making it a national policy. The two photos show the International Children's Library. The one on the left is the former Imperial Library building, and the gallery area on the right was expanded as a new facility. This is designed by architect Tadao Ando. I will mention afterward. There is a genre of architecture called library architecture. In the past, this term referred to architecture that pursued a design that emphasized the functionality of libraries, ensuring their functional library ideas by the Japan Library Association. They were rooted in the concepts of the small and medium library report and the citizen library prepared by the association. They prioritized operational efficiency and accessibility over mere aesthetic ornamentation. In this concept, children's services were the most basic, and they always required that libraries be separated from adult collections and provided with open shelves for children, low tables and chairs, a reading aloud room, and a counter staffed by children librarians. Hino City Central Library was built in 1973 and had been a representative library building of its time. It was designed by architect Azusaki To. It was characterized by its spacious and easy-to-use modernist architecture. The floor plan shows that there is a designed open area for children. This red part. And the number of library buildings designed by some renowned architects has been also increasing. Apart from the Hiroshima City Children's Library, Kenzo Tange's only other library project was the expansion of the former Rikkyo University main library. However, his disciples have designed libraries such as Arata Isozaki, Oita Prefectural Oita Library, 1966, which is considered his breakthrough work, and his technique of combining straight lines and planes is extremely impressive. Others are Kisho Kurokawa, Suginami Ward Central Library, Tokyo, 1982, and Yoshio Taniguchi, Akita City Central Library, Meitoka, 1983. The designs of Kenzo Tange and his disciples tend to be functionalist yet powerful. Librarians have sometimes whispered that libraries designed by the famous architects are difficult for the public to use. And certainly, they have a linear image and a movement, and line of sight of library users may not have been taken into sufficient consideration at first stage, I think. However, in light of this, the works of famous architects in recent years have begun to appear that are comfortable, easy to use, and have excellent design. Recently, library architects that has attracted attention includes Toyo Ito, Gifu City Media Cosmos, 2015, Kengo Kuma, Kumo Ue Library, which means house floating in the cloud, Yasuhara Town, Kochi Prefecture, 2018, and Mitsuru Senda, Ishikawa Prefectural Library, 2022. Their approach emphasizes this design without sacrificing functionality. GIF Media Cosmos has a greatly undulating ceiling with many large umbrellas hanging down, creating spaces that are comfortable for users to stay. Kumonoue Library makes abundant use of cedar wood sourced from the local area. Users must take off their shoes before entering, creating a relaxing space where they can enjoy the feel and the scent of the wood. The new Ishikawa Prefecture Library, which was built in 2022, is also known as Bibliobarn. The name means the rings of a book, which refers to the size of bookshelves arranged in multiple circles in a huge atrium space. The National Library, Diet Library, is the National Library established after the war, modeled after the U.S. Library of Congress. Its main building, 1968, was designed by modernist architect Kunio Maekawa, who had studied under Le Corbusier before the war. And after returning to Japan, he became a pioneer of modernist architecture in pre-war Japan. After graduating from university, Tange joined Maekawa's office. While its branch, the International Children's Library was renovated 2002 by Tadao Ando, and has currently launched a project called Children's Book Forest, building children's libraries around the country using his own funds. There are currently 5 libraries in Osaka and elsewhere, as well as the Honnomori Children's Library Ship, Kagawa Prefecture. The high bookshelves that reach all the way to the ceiling are a distinct feature, but these are for display purposes to symbolize the forest of books. Separate spaces have been set aside for easy access to the open access shelves. The idea of, this is conclusions. This idea of burying books, burying children reading, dates back to before the war in Japan. This has continued consistently since the post-war period, particularly during the period of rapid economic growth and establishment of establishment of libraries for children has matured considerably to the present day. The architecture of Hiroshima City Children's Library, making use of its morning glory or mushroom-like curves, was unique among the modern rectilinear design that Tange emphasized in his early works. He seemed to understand that the essence of our children's library is to create a place where children can freely access books. It can be said that this was a pioneering work that would lead to the 21st century as a library architecture. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Nemoto. We could learn much larger context how libraries were contributed to education for children. And we also learned the evolution of architectural design of libraries designed by famous architects. Yeah, thank you very much. So we have about 10 minutes left. So from here, we would like to have a little discussion among speakers today. To start the discussion, I'd like to ask Professor Nemoto to provide a few comments on the talks by other speakers. So could you give us some comments, and then we will react to your comment.
Okay. I'd like to make 3 tiny comments. One is architectural archives. This time I had the invariable experience of learning about the existence of architectural archives at the request of the Research Institute of Shimizu Corporation, a major construction company in Japan. Construction companies possess basic archives related to architecture, such as architectural drawings and models. If the metadata were made public or digitized, it would become a very valuable cultural resource. It would be desirable for this to be shared by registering it in the Japan Search, a metadata for cultural resources provided by the National Diet Library. My own research has focused on libraries, and I am interested in the relationship between libraries and archives and where the boundaries lie. Many of these cultural institutions in Japan merely adopted Western ideals, and many national and local government libraries and archives only possess minimal functions. Needless to say, children's libraries were have been included in these minimal functions. In Europe and the United States, libraries often have a longer history than archives, and many libraries fulfill the function of archives. In the future, libraries and archives should broaden their scope and actively cover such materials in between. At that time, the way of thinking about cultural resources that private companies should handle will also become clearer. The second, university libraries and university archives. I learned for the first time that Kenzo Tange's archival collection is housed at Harvard University. He was a professor at the University of Tokyo. Regarding this, Toshiya Yoshimi, a sociologist who also served as vice president of the University of Tokyo, visited the Francis Loeb Library at Harvard and stated that while it was regrettable that the Tange collection went to Harvard, it would have been impossible for the University of Tokyo to operate such an archive in the high level, and that it was deserved that it was made available in this way. I completely agree. This is due to the difference in positioning of libraries within university administration and the scale of that finances. The libraries of the University of Tokyo and Harvard University have similarities consisting of a large central library and numerous departmental libraries. However, at the University of Tokyo, with the exception of a few departments, it is impossible to individual library to operate such specialized collections with full-time professional staff. I hear that under the second Trump administration, federal and state governments have tightened their grip on educational and cultural institutions. However, the importance of varying such archival materials has been cultivated over a long history. I believe we should appreciate that Harvard University allocates its large privately held fund to this seemingly less glamorous area. I'd like to stop at this. We don't have enough time. Thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I would like a few feedbacks to Professor Nemoto's comment. The first one was about architecture archives. Then you mentioned that if our company opened our corporate archives to public, it will be much valuable for some audiences, public people to utilize the archives. I really agree with that. Then actually some architectural materials are very hard to handle because there are so many stakeholders around the material. So sometimes it's pretty hard to check the kind of contractual conditions on the materials. So it has a lot of hurdles to make it public, but actually we are trying to do that. And then we have a plan to open a few parts of our corporate archive in near future. So yeah, and then what I try to do at this forum was to introduce some old pictures which was stored in our corporate archives. So you saw some old pictures of library or construction sites or something like that. So that came from our corporate archives. So that is one reactive comment for Professor Nemoto. And Ines, do you have any comments on his opinion around architecture archives and university library and university archives? Could you turn it on?
There. Yes, in relation to what you're talking about, archives being available or not available, of course, when an archive leaves a country, there's a lot of, battles between those who think it's a good idea or not a good idea. The truth is that be it a corporation, be it a university, be it a museum, each has a different mission and has a different purpose, and you operate within the context that you are. So for me, as an architect and archivist, the university library is the best place to be because the mission is to make them available so that new research can happen. In a corporation, it may have to do with having, the documents so that they can renovate the buildings in the future. Or so each one operates with different missions, and that guides what you do with the archives. That doesn't mean that within a corporation you could have a research center that is, dedicated to making this material available to others as well. The advantage of a university in relation to a museum, for example, is that we try to collect broad and deep, whereas a museum would want, the 3 or 4 best drawings of an architect. because their mission is to make this available to a broad audience and in exhibitions. In a university, we are here for research, and if you do not have archives, there is little research that you can do. That being said, having brought the Tange archive to the United States, the commitment from the very beginning was to make it as available as possible. It will never be completely digitized. It's an enormous archive. There's 20,000 drawings. I think we've digitized about 800, and we will continue digitizing as requests come in. But the problem with the Tange archive is that as soon as it lands in front of a conservator, it's 50 hours of work, So there's already an investment in just getting the drawing stabilized enough to be able to pass it through a scanner. So it's a lot of investment. And university, we don't have infinite funds. So we have the same problems other institutions have. But understanding the context within which you're operating and what the mission is, then you can move forward in the direction that you think that would serve your institution the best. And in our case, it's opening it up to the world. I mean, we can't, have Tange only at Harvard. We are open to the world. Anybody can come and look at the drawings, like Takashi actually did. The drawings that are digitized are available online, so you can get them. You can Google GSD archival collections, and from the beginning, because we were working with students that were from Japan or knew how to read and write in Japanese. And all the drawings were Japanese, and not all the drawings, but most of them. And the dates were not even in the Gregorian calendar. We needed somebody who could read the drawings to be able to describe them. And because we had those students, I asked them, okay, now you're going to index them both in English and in Japanese. So the titles of the projects and the geographic locations of the projects are always in English and in Japanese. The idea is that they be available to the world.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope we will have a kind of continuous cooperation between your archives and our archives and some other archives.
We have many drawings where Tsuboi was the engineer, the structural engineer, and I would imagine Shimizu Corporation was the corporation that built. So we can work together to get more things digitized.
Great.
With long-term planning.
Mm-hmm. So, Dr. Nishiyama, do you have any comments on Nemoto Sensei's comments and Aine's discussions? Could you turn it on?
Sorry. Today's my attention is Tange truly a modernist in Japan, considering that the morning glory shaped shell of the Hiroshima Children's Library was adapted for use in his other projects all over the world. I'm curious about how he viewed the relationship between function and form or shape. This children's library in Hiroshima is an interesting subject for a case study, I think. Tange's archives in Harvard University, introduced by Ms. Ines, and other archives in Japan or in Hiroshima might provide us some insights, I guess. This is my comment.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, then I heard Ines is working on digitization of Tange collection. So if we could connect those digital resources on Japan Search, for example, as Nemoto Sensei mentioned, we will have much advanced research, and we will do a more collaborative working on that. I think that is a very good direction. So, Nemoto Sensei, do you have anything to add? Ines, do you have anything to add?
No, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so our time is already exceeding. So thank you very much, everyone, attending this forum. This was just a small forum, but I think it will be a beginning of collaboration between architecture archives, and then maybe some attendees will start utilizing some archival materials, visiting Harvard University online or at site, or accessing Japan Search or some local archives. Then we will share more abundant knowledge around those materials and how our culture has been developed from archival materials we could learn from those archives. So I'd like to finish this forum now. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for speakers and attendees. So this is the end of forum. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to thank Akira and Nozami too for excellent talks that you gave, and Takashi. Thank you.
Thank you.